don't look for edges everywhere. At certain points in a painting, things disappear. They just gently move away from the main core, so that what we end up doing is painting what we recognise when we close our eyes. We look for the effect of the bucket, not necessarily all the detail in the bucket, because we know subconsciously that it is a bucket by the effect of lines and marks. Some marks stay, some marks go. So now I'm going to fuse it, because when we paint by numbers, which is not a bad way to go really, because that's what we're doing, then we need also to understand how to fuse those numbers so that we have a blending here and there. So let's do that now. Well, I'm just holding the brush as I'd hold the pencil, as I did when I started sketching. So there's no unusual or new technique that you're going to adopt to learn to paint. You simply pick it up as you picked up your pen in the office, and you start just doing what we've got to do, and that's sort of blending one into the other. Now remember, I mentioned to you earlier that it's important to know how much thinner to put in with the paint, because that will affect the drying period. Now, oils take a long time to dry, but the more thinner you put in that paint when we start painting, the quicker it will evaporate and the more stable the paint will be, and therefore easier to work. And you'll notice how the strokes now are simply going on rather nicely. There's no dragging off of paint at all. The paint that I'm putting on now is sitting over the other paint. That's because the other paint is now stable. That little bit of moisture has gone out of it. It's been soaked into the canvas and it's evaporated. So the two processes there, by simply being where I am, have enabled me to get on with the job, so to speak. I'm constantly referring to the bucket as I'm doing this, so the sketching is in my head. I've got a visual record in there, which is working away through my hands, onto the brush, onto the canvas, but I'm also processing what I'm seeing at the same time in front of me. The blending there, I'm using a variety of strokes. I'm going up and down, then across. Remember, they're the same sort of strokes that I used when I cross-hatched, when I was sketching. So again, I'm not doing anything new. I'm simply looking at the shape. If it's round, then let the stroke follow the roundness. If it's vertical, then let the stroke follow the verticality. The side of the bucket would be best done with a vertical stroke. The roundness of the body of the bucket, which is a cylinder, is best achieved with round strokes. So let the shape, let the contour of the bucket be the guiding path for the mark of the brush. And you see, I just go back and forwards over the mixing spot there. I'm adding a little bit more blue, a little bit more white, a little bit more red here and there to achieve those little nuances, those little shifts in the value that occur on a rounded surface that receives the sunlight. The lip is rounded, the body of the bucket's rounded. It's all a rounded shape. So we need to change the strokes and adjust to that to impart that effect of roundness. Now the handle was in shadow and in light. Now it's white, and I've used a little bit of red in with that blue mix to make it into a nice warm grey. And the steel band that connects the handle to the bucket body itself, again I use a little bit of that same warm grey, and I'll over paint that with some highlight. Now there on that handle, bang, that light that bounces straight on that handle from the sun gives us a clear statement. By adding that white, we are saying what that is with 100% accuracy and drama. And where that sun clips on the lip as it falls to the bucket from above, we have that shimmer line. It simply hits in one area, then it shudders out from there as it finds its way around again the top of the bucket. So we need to find that and do that as we see it, not as it would think it to be, but as we in fact see it in front of us. And we look for wherever there's a shift in light now. And it occurs when we start to look carefully for that light, we'll find it. When we first started on this exercise, we didn't look for that. We were looking for shapes. We weren't looking for detail. And now we're trying to nail the detail. We're looking for the impact areas. Where is that shift a little bit more than another area? Where's that light just a little bit more? And so we're now looking and we're seeing hard with our eyes. We're working our eyes. We're making our eyes now do the work for us. And that's what in general life we don't do. We look for the generalities in things. Well, that's where we start in painting. We look for the generality and then we move inexorably towards the detail, because the detail is what gives us the finality. And on the handle here, that little drop of dark in there tells us that that's a hollow cylinder. It's not a full cylinder, it's a hollow cylinder, and that steel runs through the centre of it. Just that attention to detail there tells us more about the story. And where the bucket sits, it rounds off underneath. So by dropping a little bit more dark there, I'm establishing that dimension as well. Okay, now that was easy. There really wasn't a problem in there. But remember, my main purpose in that part was to fuse the three areas. So let's recap on what we've done. We identified the main areas on the bucket. We then applied a colour to that area, because we can't go too far from blue because it's a blue bucket, all right? But we put in a red, we put in white, and from those three colours we then established a tone or a value of the blue and the strength of the blue. We then filled in we coloured in like we did when we were kids. We coloured in the three main areas. And towards the end, I lifted the colour. I lifted not the colour, but the tone. I lifted the tone. I went for the highlights. I went for where that light, where the sun struck that lip. I then looked for another part on the other side of the bucket where it struck that lip. Then I looked for the snout on the bucket where it hit it again. And I looked for the front of the bucket where the roundness was absorbing more light or less light, and tried to graduate the tones in there. But overall, the painting came from establishing three colours of a certain tone. Now, I can retain those three colours and I can move that bucket in any position I want to. And under this light, the same light that exists for maybe 4 to 5 hours in the middle of the day, those three colours will apply to that bucket irrespective of the position I place it in. So, how simple is that? Sketch it, establish the three areas, establish the three colours, or the number of areas and the three colours, and simply colour in. And then carefully look at it and look for the fusion. And when you find the fusion, simply use the brush to make that gradation. All right. So, the next part of this little exercise is to look at what happens when we introduce, let's say, two other dynamics. What happens when we move that bucket away from the viewer? Let's say we take it away 100 metres. What happens to our colour and our tone? Does it remain the same? Well, it doesn't. What happens if we sit the bucket on, say, a sandy area? Now, what's sand? Sand is basically a beige colour. It's a warm colour. It's a yellow-based colour. What will that do to the colour and the tone of the blue in the bucket? Will it change? It will. And that's what we've got to look at. So when we come back, we'll have a look at that.